What's up, everybody? It is Tyler with Mom's Basement MMA. I have a very special guest with us today. Honored to have David Bulldawg Michaud on the show. David, how are you doing today?
Doing good, doing good. How you doing?
I am fantastic, and it's an honor to meet you, and it's an honor to have you on the show. As we were talking about a little bit before, we started recording this, we're from the same area, and I actually heard about you probably over a decade ago, just being a wrestler and tearing through people. And I kind of wanted to start our story off, not so much about your background, but kind of like what you've been up to since 2019. Obviously, you've been in the news. Obviously, you've made an announcement about just kind of the uncertainty of what's going on. So can you just kind of tell us from the after the Cooper fight, what have you been up to the past couple years?
Oh well, after that fight, so I ended up having to get thumb surgery. I had messed up my thumb pretty good, broke it at the joint, and whenever I had the two fights one night, whenever I fought, I don't know which fight it was. It was the first one or whenever I fought Franza, whether it was Doomsday or Franza. I think it was the first one. And I came out and my thumb was hurt and I couldn't really open and close my hand. But, I had another fight. You just you walk by the doctor and like, how you feel? And obviously you just got to say, oh, I'm good, man. No
Right.
problem. No worries. So then after that fight, I couldn't move my thumb at all. But so I knew it was messed up. I knew it was really, I knew it was really fucked up. And it was like, well, I can't tell the doctors because if I need to get surgery, they won't let me fight in the finals.
Right.
So they was checking it out, and I was like, oh yeah, it's fine. It does this all the time, but it was super swollen. I couldn't move it at all. And they're like, are you sure? And I'm like, oh yeah, it's good. Don't worry. And so I went through that whole camp for Cooper. With my thumb was already all busted up, and then after that fight, whenever I fought Cooper, then I ended up getting surgery about a week later and got some pins in it and a bunch of hardware and stuff. So I took time off for that. I couldn't really do too much, couldn't do anything with my right hand, just had to kind of chill and, well, do like cardio and footwork and stuff.
Sure.
So got that off. Then it was like, all right, season's coming up. 2020 season still was on. Everything was looking good. I had been told I was going to fight Rory. So everything was good. I'm like, okay, I'm able to train, start getting in shape. And then, yeah, the world turned upside down and
Right.
PFL got canceled, and that was shitty. Yeah, that sucked, man. I was riding high, coming off. The next season will be better. Didn't happen. So everything was shut down for a while. We were still kind of training. All the stuff was shut down. So I had like a group of 3 or 4 guys that I would just kind of train with. Um, and then once things started opening back up, we had I guess just the UFC was the only one doing shows. So when the UFC started doing shows, I think Cannonier had a fight, Mario Bautista had a fight, like a couple guys had fights. So I was in there training and helping out and still getting my work in. And that was good, staying busy, but wasn't able to fight myself. So that was pretty horrible.
Right.
And yeah, went through that whole thing, and then Bellator opened up, so everyone was kind of getting fights except for PFL. They had told us that they would thinking about putting on like a one-off show at the end of the year, so guys could make some money. So I was like, all right, because it's been a long time, and it was a long time for me. And I was even in the finals. There were guys that were still under contract that hadn't fought even longer than I had.
Right.
So it was tough. It was tough for everyone. They didn't end up putting on a show. That sucked. And then, yeah, just this year came around. So I was like, all right, I hit up Ray Cepho and I was like, hey, is that still Rory? And he said, yeah, that's what it looks like. So I was fired up. I was happy. That's what I wanted. Wanted to get that big name under my belt, really make a name for myself off of him. So training, I was in training actually before I was training, I was in shape, training hard. I'm always in pretty good shape. And so kind of before I was going to start my camp, I ended up getting COVID. And
Oh, shit.
so I was actually supposed to go corner Mario Bautista, and I got popped on the UFC test. Well, I felt a little sick. Thought I had a cold.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I'll just stay at the gym this week. Didn't go in. And then the UFC test came. And I'm actually before that, I got one of the rapid tests. like the 20-minute test, and they said I was good. So it's like, okay, so I just got a cold. I'll just hang out. And was doing that, just sitting around the house for a week. And then I got the UFC test. I'm like, okay, well, still just got a cold, took it and sent it in. And then they called me up, said that it was a positive. And so they was like, yeah, have you had COVID recent in the last 3 months? Is this a false positive or do you have the vaccine? I'm like, oh man, no, none of that. But so I couldn't go there, and that sucked. And so then whenever I came back and started training, it was hard, man. I was really tired. Like I had my heart rate monitor, and my heart would be over 200 beats per minute for like 10, 15 minutes straight when I'm trying to work out, and I would just feel exhausted. Like it was
Right.
hard. It was really hard for me to come back from that. Um, so through training, started getting to camp. I was still a little fatigued, a little worn down still. But after a few weeks, I got over it, start feeling good, felt like I was in great shape again. Um, and then start doing all my medicals and stuff for the fights and got a physical. And the doctor was like, oh man, I think you're going to have to go see a cardiologist after you got my EKG. And I was like, oh, well, I mean, I feel fine. I don't think so. It's all right. So then he sent it in. They sent in the stuff to PFL and their medical people, and they was like, hey, you need an echocardiogram, a stress test, what Holter monitor, and a cardiac MRI. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm
Yeah.
fine. So I got an echo, and so I talked to them, and they wanted me to go out to Vegas. They had guys in Vegas, and I was like, well, what if I just stay here? I don't want to spend a few days in Vegas because it wouldn't just be like a drive out, drive back thing. So I told them, hey, let me just do it here. And they said, okay, well, if the echo looks good and the stress test, then you can probably not do the cardiac MRI. And my cousin's actually a cardiologist. So I hit her up and I'm like, hey, I need these things. She's like, okay. And I sent her my EKG and she looked at it and she was like, okay, yeah, we need an echo tomorrow, like ASAP. So I was like, man, like what?
Yeah.
So
Crazy.
we did the echo, and after the echo, she was like, hey, we're going to need a cardiac MRI. So the PFL had already kind of said, if it's good, we don't need the MRI. And I was like, well, what the hell? And so we did the MRI. It was literally like just a few days before I was supposed to leave for the fight. So was going to be driving out to New Jersey, getting ready, everything getting set. I was at the gym the day after the MRI, and I was warming up, getting ready to hit mitts. And my cousin called me and she's like, hey, come in, because I was working with a different cardiologist, one of her friends, and she's like, hey, come in and we'll go see so and so, and it's not good news. And I was like, what the fuck? So went and saw her, and they told me what I had: bicuspid aortic valve with it's basically a stretched out aorta. Like my aorta is too big from the valve being messed up, and no one will clear me for contact. Like I've gone to a few cardiologists already. Last week I went out to University of Texas at Houston and did an exercise study with some guy who's supposed to be like on the cutting edge of this stuff. And that was actually a little better, because then what they had started with was saying that I couldn't get my heart rate over 120. And I'm like, what do you even mean? Like, that's not, you can't even get a workout. So this guy on this thing, he told me I could get up to 160, which is a lot better, but still not cleared for any hard contact. But that was just recently. So whenever I got that news, then like talked to another cardiologist, and actually my cousin and her husband are both cardiologists. Talked to them, then I talked to someone else, and so then I called up Ray Cephal and I was like, hey, and it was bad, man. Like I was super sad, I was crying. I was like, dude, they're not gonna let me fight. Like I don't know what else to say. So there was that, and I was like, hey, just give me 2 days. I'll announce it tomorrow. And he was cool. He was like, yeah, for sure. Whatever you need, man. And so I actually, after I did that, then I just shot Rory a DM. I was like, hey, I'm not gonna be able to fight, so I'm sure they'll find you someone else. And I don't know when they would tell, So I always hate whenever they would just like, because sometimes promotion will just like give you a new guy and not tell you that the other guy has been out,
Yeah.
or like they'll know for like a week that the guy is not out. So I didn't know, what their plan was for that. So I just figured I'd hit him up and let him know. And then yeah, made the announcement. Probably like the most the most interactions I've ever gotten on any of my posts or anything. So that was kind of shitty. The only thing that people get to know me for is having a bad heart. But there was a
Well,
bunch of people. There was a bunch of people that messaged me on whether it was Instagram, Twitter, even I had my fan page on Facebook, on all those things. There's probably over 70 people that had messaged me and be like, hey, I have this, or hey, my mom has that, or my dad had that. Like a couple of people like, hey, my dad had that and they didn't realize it and he died fixing fence when he was 45. I'm like, Jesus, what the fuck? So yeah, it's I guess it's like 0.8 to 1.2% of the population has it or something, but it's something that I had never heard about. And I mean, I don't know. I didn't know that anyone had ever heard about it until all these people are hitting me up about it.
is that
So
a genetic thing?
yeah, it's you were born with it. Oh, actually, so for the thing, like, so for my EKGs, that's what I had to get all my heart stuff for, was for a bad EKG. But what I have didn't cause that. So like, it's actually the COVID caused my bad EKG. They said a lot of people who have COVID, their EKGs are all messed up, and so that's what caused it. So if I didn't have COVID, they wouldn't have known, and I would have just been able to fight. I would have
That's
rather
shitty
done
on
it.
one end and then like really good on the other.
No, I'd have rather fought. I mean, I don't know. I would have just went through a whole camp. Like I was getting rounds from super good guys, fucking working, like doing hard cardio, hard sparring, hard wrestling, all this. And I was 2.5 weeks out. I was like, just give me 2.5 more weeks. Just give me 3 weeks. Like, let me
Mhm.
get 3 more weeks of what I've been doing for the rest of my life. And obviously, they weren't going to go for that. So, yeah, it sucked, man. Like, and I do think about it, like, man, well, if I just didn't get COVID, I would have been able to fight this season. And,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
I get
it is one of those things. Like, you never know because they're worried about an aortic rupture, which would be your aorta exploding, and if that happens, you're just dead already. Like,
yeah, you're toast.
unless you're already on the operating table with a new aorta sitting there, they're not going to be able to get you in and get you fixed up. So that's what they're worried about. And yeah, since then, took some time off. It was tough, man. It was real tough. I mean, it's still tough. Like whenever I'm at fights, I was at the LFA, went to corner one of my boys, and he ended up, his opponent test positive for COVID. So we're just watching, and I'm like, God damn! Like, and we had a couple other guys fighting, and I wasn't even in the back, and it was tough. It was real tough, but yeah, it was a good experience, like getting back into the fights, and now been helping guy coach at the gym. So just trying to stay in it. Like I'd never thought that I'd be someone who struggled with giving it up, but I also wasn't prepared for it to be taken away from me. It was like I always knew, well, once I'm done, I'm done. I can let it go. I can, whenever I say I'm retired, I'll be all right. I'll be able to just move on and do whatever's next. And then having the rug pulled out from under you, I was like, well, what the fuck? Because so then it was like I had thought I didn't want to fight until I was 40 or nothing, but I thought 2 or 3 more years. Try to win PFL one of those times, get a win over Rory, beat that Magomed Karamov, beat those two guys, get one back from Ray Cooper. Like those were kind of my goals. Figured I beat Rory and Magomed. Like people were really high on them. So I figured I'd beat those two, and things would be looking up, things would be looking good, and my career would really be looked on a lot different than what it is now. Beating these guys that everyone else is super high on, that they say they're possibly top 15 in the world. Like that's how I wanted to be thought of.
I
And
think of you like that. Like I've been following your career for a long time, and you fought some fucking savages. To get to like you have fought like the toughest of the toughest dudes, and you have beat a lot of them.
Yeah.
Like every single one of your fights, I've never seen a boring fight of yours. Every single one of your fights, like you bring it, and like you're going out there to. I don't want to say kill a guy, but like you're going out there like you're not a point fighter. Like you go out there like you're like a barbarian, and
Yeah,
that's
and
what
that's one thing. Like I always talk about when guys get mad about fans booing. I'm like, just don't be boring, and you don't get booed. Like I never got booed. I never had to worry about it. I don't. If I was out there having a boring fight, sitting there playing patty cake with the guy or something, and fans are booing me, I'd be like, yeah, I deserve that. I deserve to get booed. These guys are paying hundreds of dollars for these tickets. They want to see. They want to see blood. They want to see action. They don't want to see guys out here point fighting, trying to win a decision, or laying on someone without any subs or any strikes, no damage. So
those
yeah, I'm
Marty foot stomps for
no.
45 minutes.
Hey, Marty's turned it around though. His
Yeah.
last few fights,
Well,
he's
he hooked it up last fight, that's for sure.
yeah. But even against Burns, it was a good fight. Uh, Woodley fight was bad. The first
Yeah.
Masvidal fight was bad, but then, he's got Burns who is super good off his back. So, and they've trained together. So he must obviously know, like, okay, I don't want to go down there with him, and kept it on the feet. But Burns, I mean, that was a good fight too, because Burns, he's fast and he cracked him a few. That was kind of the first time Usman really had a little bit of a wobbly leg, I think.
David, would you agree with me? Like, since we're talking about Usman, do you think Covington and Burns are the only two guys in 170 that can beat him?
It's tough to say. I'd like to see. Honestly, I think a Wonder Boy would be a tough fight for him
You do? Oh, okay. I would. I was. Why is
on
that?
a big cage, because he's got such good footwork. His footwork is so good. He doesn't really get pushed up against the fence too much. He can get knocked out. Like Wonder Boy, he seems to get hurt
Yeah.
when he gets hit a lot, and I don't know. I don't like saying guys have bad chin or anything, but he seems to get hurt on a higher percentage of the strikes that hit him. Maybe it's just because guys are loading up so much. You miss a bunch of punches, so it's like, God, I just got to hit him once. So they're loading up and they're landing these.
Right.
But yeah, his footwork is really good. Usman doesn't have the quickest of feet. He doesn't have very good footwork. He's kind of heavy footed. He plods forward, but he's got such good power, So that's the thing. Like if he just lands a jab, like he was hurting Burns with his jab. So if he lands a couple jabs, he might be hurting him. But I think that would be an interesting fight. Unfortunately, interesting doesn't always mean exciting.
That's true. That's true. And you know what? Kind of like an unpopular opinion, I guess. I like Wonder Boy. I do. I'm a fan of his, but I don't think he'll beat Burns. I don't think that.
Hey, I think he's gonna beat Burns.
Do you? I think
Yeah.
I don't know. I like Gilbert
I don't know.
Burns
It's
a lot.
tough though because Burns is faster. He's coming up from 55. He's bringing that like lightweight speed. That's the thing guys don't realize when you come up a weight class. You're used to fighting faster guys, so it seems a little bit slower whenever you come up, and then that helps out a lot too.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be really interesting to see. I'm really looking forward to the bouts, but I wanted to shift gears a little bit, David, and I want to ask you a little bit and try to like set the tone so like other people who could kind of like understand this a little bit more and put it into context a little bit more. So you're from the Oglala Lakota Nation, grew up on the Pine Ridge Reservation, and for people who don't know, um, that's like a tough place to grow up in, and that's like probably the understatement of the world. Um, According to the 2010 Census Bureau, 89% of the people that live on the reservation are unemployed. Um, Half of the residents live below the poverty line. And again, according to the 2010 census, the average per capita income is not even $10,000 a year. So I think it's safe to say, David, that you weren't born with a silver spoon in your mouth, and you've really had to grind and do a lot of things different to kind of get where you are. Can you talk a little bit about growing up in Pine Ridge and just how much of a challenge that was for you?
Yeah, like both my parents had jobs. They were teachers, which it's not like you're making millions or anything, but really in Pine Ridge, like I was almost like a rich kid. Like, I knew a lot of people. My parents didn't live together. They lived in two different houses, but the only people that lived in our houses were me and my siblings, or my siblings and my parents. So it was not my dad's. It was me, my dad, me, and my sister. My mom's, me, and my sister. And a lot of people don't have that. Like, I know I definitely knew and grew up around people that had 15 to 20 people living in their house. They have both their grandparents on their mom and dad's side, and then like a couple aunts, a couple uncles, and all their kids. So it wasn't that's not my story. Like, that's not what I had to go through. I knew people like that, and I'm good friends with people like that, and still know a lot of people like that, but I didn't have those same struggles. I always we never we didn't have to worry about like having food on the table or anything like a lot of my friends had to. But yeah, it's nice. Like, I feel like people in Pine Ridge are really close. It's like, maybe it's just because you're living with so many people in your family, but like my family, we would probably at least once a month have get-togethers. So we're just going to my grandma's house, and she's making some 20 pounds of food or whatever, and we're all sitting around the table and just having a good time. But yeah, there's not a lot of things to do. Like, got sports through the school, and then there'd be baseball leagues in the summer. But other than that, there's not too much to do. There's basketball courts everywhere, and everyone loves to play basketball. So that's about all there is. And basketball is kind of king. So I grew up wrestling. My dad was a wrestling coach, so not many people were wrestling, and like no one ever really thought anything of it. And then I ended up getting kind of good, but then whenever I got good at fighting, I was taking fights and winning fights. Then people were interested in it. But that was cool because we'd go up to the Civic Center, and there'd be like 5,000 people at the Civic Center, and probably more than half of them were native, because we'd have like 4 or 5 guys on the card, and they'd be fired up. Me or my buddy Brandon, my cousin Harry, like, we were kind of some of the bigger stars because we go in there and we were always putting people away. And then I was in high school, so everyone liked that.
I wanted to ask you about that because according to your Wikipedia page, it says you started like fighting in the AMI circuit when you were in high school, like at 15. Is that true?
Yeah, when I was 15, I fought at Sturgis. They
Yeah.
used to have at the busted knuckle. Well, I guess it's the knuckle, but during the rally, it'd be the busted knuckle.
Yeah.
And they would just roll out some mats. It's got that dirt floor. I don't know if you've ever been to knuckle, but they do like bull riders in there sometimes too. Yeah, it's got that dirt floor, and they roll out the mats. And these weren't like good mats. These were like wall soft, like no kind of thing. So my first fight was I was 15. I went there. They asked how much I weighed, and I knew how much I weighed because my dad's a wrestling coach. So we always had a scale. I'm like, yeah, 170. Put it in, and my dad had to sign up for me because they didn't allow minors in the bar at all. You had to be
Right.
over 21 even to go in. So I had to get signed up, and then they're like, "Oh, well, would you fight a guy who's about 185?" And I'm like, God, like, I already know I'm at an age disadvantage. And I'm like, yeah, I guess. So then they're like, "Oh yeah, that guy over there," and we're looking at him like, this guy is not 185. This guy's like at least 200. And
Oh,
I
God.
got a pretty good eye for weights. Like, if I see
Yeah.
someone, I'm normally pretty good after all the years of wrestling and stuff. So I'm like, God damn. And then this guy's in his 20s, so they point me out to him. Then he looks at me, kind of giving me the eye, and he starts shadow boxing hard. And at the time, I had no idea. Like, I had done a little bit of boxing. My cousins boxed, a couple of the guys on the wrestling team boxed. So I'd done a little bit of boxing. And this one, they gave you 16-ounce gloves, and you could throw them off if you wanted to wrestle. If you threw them off, you could still punch, just not to the face. So I had the gloves on. I went out, I threw an overhand, missed it. It went too far behind him. I just grabbed a body lock, took him down, threw the gloves off, and I was kind of beating him up a little bit and got a choke. But this was all like in 30 seconds. So I
Dang.
got that. And my choke, like, we had never done real jujitsu. All that we had done was, oh, look at that on the UFC. Try it on me. I had
Yeah.
never had a jujitsu gym. Nearest jujitsu gym at that time had to be Denver or Sioux Falls, which are both about 400 miles away.
Right.
I don't think Rapid I was pretty sure Rapid didn't have anything when I was fighting in Sturgis. A few years later, I think they ended up getting a few things. But so that was my first fight. And then after that, the announcer is just like dogging the guy. He's like, oh, this guy lost to a 15-year-old kid with SpongeBob underwear on, then this and that. And then the bikers will throw money in if they like your fight. So I end up getting like $57. And I thought I was balling out. I thought I was the baddest 15-year-old in the world.
That
Which
is a
like,
lot of money for a 15-year-old kid.
yeah.
I mean,
So
golly, like 15 years old, like that's crazy. Like, did you have to like convince your mom at all, or did you not even tell her?
didn't tell her.
Oh,
No, didn't tell her. Didn't
yeah, I
tell her.
did.
We
I
was just
thought
going
so.
to Sturgis. I was just going with my dad to Sturgis to hang out. And that's what we told her. And came back. And then like a week later, she was looking at me. She's like, did you fight? I was like, yeah. But it was too late by then. I'd already fought. And I was like, and I won. I didn't get fucked up. So can't
Did
be
you
too
fight
mad,
again
right?
before you turned 18?
Yeah, I had 12 fights before I turned 18, and then yeah, they were all amateur, but they weren't all at Sturgis. Like I said, when it was Ring Wars in Rapid City, and
Mhm.
so they would have fights like every month, and so we would always get on there. I'd get a fight between like football season and wrestling season. Like football season's done, then they hit me up like, hey, we got a what was it? Oh, it was like a 205-pound title fight. And I was like, all right, let's go. I was like 16 and just like went in there and yeah, I was thinking about going pro, but if I went pro, I wouldn't have been able to do high school sports. So after wrestling season my senior year, I was like, well, should I do it? And I'm like, I still want to do track and like go and just kind of hang out. And
Right.
so after I graduated high school and went to college, then I went pro. But really, like if I could do it over now that I'm well, especially after my career got cut short, like I would not go to college, and I would have just went to like some gym, started training and fighting, because that 4.5 years in college, like I played football 1 year and then I wrestled for 3 years, and it just took too much away from fighting. And so like when I was wrestling, I was just kind of doing it. I was already a pro fighter by this time. So I was just kind of doing it to get better at wrestling for fighting. I wasn't wrestling to wrestle because I loved it. Like it's too hard. It's hard on the body. And then in college, it's 5 times harder. So yeah, if I could do it again, I would just not go to college and just start fighting.
David, so obviously your wrestling chops, like you had a really impressive, I think your record says 91 and 19. So like obviously like you have the wrestling pedigree. And at what point, like you were doing mixed martial arts, and then obviously you kind of said before, like I didn't really box a whole bunch, like I had to kind of like pick that up, and I slowly got into that. Like at what point did you really start um like going into like striking, boxing, that sort of stuff, away from the wrestling school, more into like the striking?
So I started boxing like while I was in high school. After I had a fight, I had a couple guys who were like regional Golden Glove boxers, like not like they're pro or anything, but they knew how to box, they knew how to throw some punches. So I started working with them and getting my hands better. And we was practicing kicks and stuff, but no one had ever taken any kind of kickboxing or Muay Thai classes or anything. So because there's like I said, there's nothing around the res, and even in Rapid City, wasn't sure if there was any kickboxing or Muay Thai stuff. Like I saw some like karate stuff, but that's different. So probably closest thing would have been 400 miles either way, either Denver or Sioux Falls. So I hadn't gotten any of that stuff. I got boxing and I really enjoyed boxing, and I still really enjoy boxing. Then once I went to college, I found a gym. It was called Action MMA, and Shayna Baszler trained there, and she was like the most well-known South Dakota MMA fighter at the time. And so I got in there with them, and one of their higher belts was Bruce Hoyer, and actually Ben Wynn, he was training there too, and he ended up being top 10 in the UFC at 25 for a while. So I was training with those guys, but it was tough because it was in Sioux Falls, which is an hour from my college.
Right.
And at this time, I was on the football team. So it wasn't like I had a lot of time. So after season, then I would try to get down there as much as I can, go down mostly Friday nights. It was like 2 hours of rolls and an hour of striking, and then stay with someone. Then Saturday morning was sparring. So I tried to do that as much as I could, but it was tough trying to be in college, play football, keep my job, and go train. Like it didn't save a lot of time. And then after that first season of football, I talked to the coach about getting a fight, and he was not really too supportive of that. So I was like,
Right.
well, this is what I want to do. Like I'd realized, I mean, I had already known, but it was like, well, I'm never going to be in the NFL. I'm 5'9". I don't run a 4.2, 4.3. Like it's fine. Um, I'm probably not going to see too much playing time until maybe my like senior year.
Right.
So I could talk to the wrestling coach. They had kind of some weaknesses at the weight that at some of the weights that I would have been good at. And he said, yeah, if you want to fight, you can take fights in off season, no problem. So I ended up starting with the wrestling team. And again, still that was tough. Like trying to go to school, wrestle, have a job, and then drive an hour one way just to go train. It was hard, but that's what I had to do to get into it because there was like a judo school in Brookings, but nothing else. And I had already kind of had wrestling, so I didn't think that I needed too many gi takedowns. So it was tough, and that's whenever I first started. Like I guess when I was like 18, 19, first started in jiu-jitsu, and they had a good Muay Thai program. So it
Yeah, I think
was
you started tearing through guys. Like you get pro, and you like I want to say you lost your very first like pro fight. Is that right, or is that your first amateur fight?
no, neither.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh? Because Tapology must be wrong then. I checked something.
So there was no commission. So most of my amateur fights aren't on Tapology.
Oh,
South
okay.
Dakota didn't have a commission until I was already in the UFC. So
Oh,
most of the stuff that I did isn't on there. I've got like 3 pro fights that also aren't on there.
oh, really? I didn't know.
Yeah.
Well, the more you know.
Yeah.
So,
I did a tournament for $1,000 on the what was it? Cheyenne River Res. I don't know when it was. I was like 21 and I got 2 wins there. And that was a pro fight, but that's not on there. I also had a different pro fight in Sturgis at the Knuckle. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I had that pro fight. I think I was like 4-0 or 3-0 at the time, and yeah, that's not on. You can't find that anywhere. And I have pictures from it, but I don't have any video or anything. So
yeah, that's cool. That's cool,
uh,
man. I didn't know that.
yeah, I mean it's not like a big deal. Like I did what I did in my career. Those 3 fights where I have wins over like bums aren't going to change anything. I think one of the guys had a winning record and the other 2 were like 0-1,
Got it.
0-0 or something. So, it's not like that's changing anything. But yeah, like those are some. And then I had 15 amateur fights, and those ain't on Sherdog or Tapology, but those were before South Dakota had a commission, and they weren't sending anything in or anything. So I think it says my first pro or my first amateur fight, I think it says was a loss, but my
Yeah.
first amateur fight was in Sturgis, and I lost. It was actually the one that I was telling you about whenever it was like after football season and they're like, hey, there's a 205 title fight, guy pulled out, and next weekend you want to do it. And I was like, oh yeah, whatever.
Right. Right.
I was weighing like 195. It was like 17, I think, or something. No, I think I had just turned 17. So I was like, all right, yeah, cool, let's go. And I
Nice.
went out and I won the
Yeah.
first round. I took him
Oh,
down, and then he hurt me with a what was it? I think he hit me with a teep and like kind of bent me over and then hit me with an uppercut. He hit me with a teep, bent me over, uppercut hook, and I kind of slid. So he knocked me down and I slid under the ropes. And I was trying to get up and the rope because it was in a ring and the ropes were holding me down. So like I pushed up and the ropes pushed me back down. So the ref stopped it. And like it wasn't a bad stop. Like because I tried to push up and then I went down. But I remember just like getting hit, and like I was falling. And I was just thinking like, catch yourself. And I slid, and I had mat burn on my face. afterwards, and I was like, God damn. But it was weird because it was like an out of body experience. Like I didn't have control of my body, because I remember thinking like, catch yourself, and I just hit on my face and slid, and then tried to get up, went down, tried to get up, and then they kind of pulled me back in, but it was over.
Like when I'm trying to look back and I look at like kind of like how your pro career went, and it's kind of like the stock market in certain respects to me, because like you're you like blitz through people, and like in the UFC, for example, like the three guys that you fought in the UFC, like murderers row, like they throw you right
Well,
in.
two of them.
Two of the well, I think Whiteley wasn't that bad.
I
Um,
mean,
and
he
you
wasn't
beat
bad in that he had. I mean, he had solid fights with guys, but like he didn't get any wins or anything. Like the other two, they were top 10. They were both top 10 for a while.
I think you beat Li Jiang Liang. I'm bad with names, but you know who I'm trying to say. I thought you
Yeah,
beat him. That was a
Jing Liang.
split. I thought you beat him. That was a
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people said that, and um, I actually like if I didn't. So in the third round, I had won like the first 2.5 minutes, and I was on top, and then he was stand getting a stand up. He had a leg, and I would jump for a guillotine, missed it, or didn't end up finishing it, and then he ended up on top for the last 2 minutes, and then he won that round on all the judges' scorecards. I was like, man, if I would have just snapped him down that front headlock, spun behind, then it definitely wouldn't have been any question. But these things happen.
So after the UFC, like, were you kind of like, so like, what happened? Did they release you, or did you just like get more money to go to Bellator? Like, how did that work?
No, I had fought a bunch of different places before I even got in Bellator. So I was one of like there was like a released like 60 guys. They had
Okay.
released a bunch of guys, like 60 to 70 guys. But I had told them, so I was at 55. I fought Li Jingliang at 70, lost that split, and then I was already kind of trending my way down to 55. I had taken fights at 65 and 60, working my way down. So like, okay, next fight will be 55. Then I fought in Phoenix, where I've been training, and fought Garrett Whiteley and beat him. So then I got that fight with Aubin Mercier in Canada, and took that loss. But even in the Whiteley fight, like fighting at 55, I felt like it was just too much of a cut. I didn't have any pop. Like I didn't have any explosiveness. Even on takedowns, I couldn't really explode into takedowns. I felt like I was in good shape, but like marathoner shape, where I could just kind of jog for 2 hours, but fights 15 minutes of sprint. So I decided to go back up to 70, where I got some more power. So I told UFC that I would take short notice fight at 70, and so I went on. I lost my first one, won, lost, and then they gave me a new contract with a pay bump, and I was like, oh well, they must like me. I had some decent fights. Uh, they're they want to keep me, and so they kept me on the shelf, and they was telling me, yeah, stay ready, stay ready. And I was telling them, yeah, anything at 70, I could take short notice. I'm not too heavy. I was hanging around 85, 90. So I was ready. And they just kept telling me, okay, stay ready, stay ready, stay ready. And never given me anything. And then randomly like start seeing reports that, oh, they're going to cut a bunch of guys. But I wasn't thinking that I would be the one getting cut, because I had gotten a new contract.
Sure.
And then, yeah, get the call, got cut. And actually, after that, then Dana called me and he said that they would send me show money. And I was like, man, just let me fight. But so then they sent me a check for show money, which helped a lot because I hadn't been able to fight for a long time, but also got released. And that was
Yeah.
tough. Then after that, well, I think my first fight back was an RFA fight, won that one, and then fought for the Titan FC title against Diego Lima. Thought I won that one. That one was another fucking split. I don't know. Crowd seemed to think that I won too, but he's a tough fight. He's a tough guy, and yeah. So then I just kind of was getting a few wins, and then getting close to getting called up somewhere, and then I take a loss, then a few wins, get close, take a loss. That Bellator fight, I didn't have a long-term contract with them. That was just a one-off fight. So,
Would you have
and
would you
then
have re-upped with them if they offered you more fights?
yeah, and then even after that fight, it was like a minute and a half finished. Then the guys are talking to me like, "Oh, that's great. Yeah, we'll be with talking with your manager, this and that," and nothing ever came of it. So, but that's how they all. I mean, all the promoters are the same way. Like they're gonna tell you hem and haw and this and that to your face, but then when it comes down to it, they don't got your back. And then I fought for Combate, and I made more fighting for Combate than I did for Bellator. And then that promoter, he was saying same thing. Yeah, we're thinking about doing a 170-pound tournament. We'd love to have you in it, but Combate, and I understand why Combate didn't like. Combate only had one guy signed at 170, and that was the guy that I fought.
Got it.
And I beat him, finished him in the second. So it wasn't like, they had a bunch of huge 170-pound roster. They had mostly smaller guys, 25, 35, 45. So there was no one for me to fight, and I didn't expect too much out of it. But when he was talking to me about it, it was, oh yeah, it'd be an 8-man tournament, 3 fights one night, winner gets 100K, and I'm like, dude, like hell yeah, let's fucking go. I was so that was my first time being close to a tournament in a long time, and for that one, I was like, well, okay. Thinking about tournament styles, like, well, I'd have to wrestle more because I get cut a lot. And if you get a bad cut, you can't go on. It's like, man, first 2 fights I'd have to wrestle. And that actually, so after that Combate fight, then my manager was talking with PFL or UFC. It was like, yeah, UFC might give you something short notice, bring you back in. PFL's thinking about you too. And then I heard about a fight in LFA, and it was in like a month. So I hit up my manager. I was like, hey, what about this fight? And he's like, oh, well, he's a tough guy, we're still talking with PFL. So I said, well, if PFL says that I got a contract, I won't fight. Like if PFL says that they want me, I'll just wait. I'll wait until PFL season. But if they're still saying, oh, we're looking at this guy and that guy and thinking about it, like, how about I take this fight, knock this guy out, then they'll for sure take me. He's like, yeah, it's risky though. And I'm like, well, I'm not here not to risk it. So took that fight, ended up beating him main event, LFA in the first round. And then like right after that, my manager was like, yeah, UFC said that they'll want you or PFL. And so for me personally, like it would be nice. I think if you end up UFC champ, you can make more money, but PFL was all in the US, which is driving for me because I don't fly. And so I was like, well, and you can be the champ in a year. I was in the UFC. It took like Leon Edwards won like 9 in a row before he finally is close to a title shot. So I was like, okay, that'll be years down the line before I get a title fight, or I could go PFL, make finals, win $1 million. So I was like, yeah, I'll just let's go PFL. So I chose PFL, went out, was feeling good, thought I'd take that first win against Sadabu. I was like, okay, we're gonna wrestle this one for sure. The guy's big. Didn't work out in my favor, getting put down in like 15 seconds with that body. But yeah, I mean, I thought that I made the right choice going with PFL. Not anything wrong with UFC, but they have so many fights overseas and everything, and those are fights that I can't take. So
it was it's kind of interesting. So I'm lucky enough where I talk to a lot of fighters that are on the regional scene, guys that are in like LFA, Combate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, Invicta, all kinds of other circuits. And when I like private, I won't say who their names are, but like when I privately talk to some of them, like more, you'd be surprised. Like a lot of them are like, yeah, like if UFC called me, sure, but like I would rather go to Bellator or PFL if I had the opportunity, because I think the money's better and they treat people better compared to the UFC, which kind of surprised me that so many of the fighters would be saying that.
Bellator's funny because they'll have like shows where it's their big shows and everything looks good and everything's perfect and they got their big names on it, and then they'll have some smaller shows and it's like you might as well be at a regional show, like the way that they treat you and everything. So it's hard to say. I think PFL just basically took a lot of the UFC's employees, or UFC's old employees. That's what it seemed like from all the people that were working. Like I had seen them all at UFC shows, and so they just kind of did everything like exactly like the UFC does, basically, which is a good thing. Like UFC's top of the game, and the way that they run fight week and everything is the best. And so PFL just does everything exactly like them. I feel like for PFL, they run so few shows that it's like every show has to be like a big show, you know, because you
Right.
only have 70 guys on the roster or whatever it is, 80 guys or whatever. I don't know this year. But so it's like every show is a big show because you're only running 9 shows a year,
Do
whereas
they have
Bellator's running a lot.
135? Do they have 135 yet?
No, 45, 45, 55, 70, 205, heavyweight, women's 55.
Okay. Okay. I think having a 35 would be dope.
So they don't have an 85.
Got
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I think so too.
Okay.
I mean, even at 85, but like, just I mean, more divisions is always better, but it is what it is. You know, they're doing what they think is best.
So David, would you
So,
say like looking back on your career, like of those three leagues, like was PFL your favorite one?
well, PFL was a favorite because I made the most money there. So,
Well
yeah,
then,
I guess
hey,
we'll say that.
then I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I like to get paid too.
But so like in PFL, you could make more money. You can go from because I was on their entry level, which was 12 and 12. And that's what UFC is too now. So in UFC, it's going to be hard to go from 12 and 12 to fighting for $1 million in a year. Like, unless you have two viral knockouts, but even then, you're still not going to be fighting for 1 million. So you can advance and get that big money quicker if you kind of bet on yourself in PFL, going from, like I said, where I was at the bottom level into the million. But then I think, you know, if you're someone who talks good and if you're Connor, then you can make multi millions. You can make more in the UFC.
Right.
So it's hard to say. Like PFL treated me well. I liked PFL a lot. I loved it. UFC, like I thought I got kind of a raw deal getting cut without getting any fights on my new contract, but you know, it's all in the past. So
But at least
it's
they,
tough.
like they mailed a check to you, which was kind of cool. I mean, yeah, it's shitty that they cut you, but if they mailed you a check for if they gave you the show money and you didn't fight, I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of
I
cool.
mean, it would have been cooler to fight though,
Yeah,
especially when
100%.
they're saying, "Yeah, stay ready, stay ready." And I'm like, "Yeah, man, I'm always ready.
Well,
Just give
yeah,
me a call.
because
Let me know."
you're not gonna advance your career just getting a check shows up in the mail. Like, yeah, the money's nice and it pays your bills, but
Yeah,
it's not
you
gonna
can
like
I can survive for a little while longer, but so after the UFC, I was working at the gym more. I was teaching classes at the gym, and then I was also working at some other gyms and just doing stuff to make money too. And then when I got in PFL, then I was able just to just fight again, you know, instead of having to try to rub fucking
yeah,
everything I could.
absolutely. So, David, before I let you go, I had a couple like questions for you, and this is the most important question for you. How many miles are on your car?
207,000. I recently just took a trip out to Tennessee, went to see my buddies, Scott Holtzman, Brian Barberina, and their families. You know, I love
Yeah.
those guys who love their families. That was right after I went to Houston for that exercise study on my heart. And I was like, well, this is kind of halfway. I had been wanting to go out here for a while. I've been wanting because whenever I was fighting in 2019 in the PFL, when I fought in New Jersey and New York, I went out to Tennessee and I trained with them for like a week and stayed there. And then from there, it was like a 10-hour drive. So instead of driving the fucking 32 or whatever, 34, whatever it would be from here, I was like, okay, go out there, get the long ways out of the way, and then take a shorter drive the week of the fight. And it's real nice out there. You know, they both have real nice places. They have great families. I know both of them real well. And yeah, I loved going out there, seeing them. Stayed at Scott's house. He chefed me up a bunch of red meat and on his grills and
That sounds delicious.
got fat. Yeah, so yeah, I just got back and it's probably a little over 207. I think it might be 209.
209.
But
So you don't fly at all. So you drive pretty much everywhere. And then there was that story that they
yeah,
did
not pretty much. Like
everywhere.
I drive everywhere. Yeah.
Like ESPN did that story on you where you like where they talked about like you driving from like Phoenix to New York for the Cooper fight.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. You guys should definitely check that out. If you haven't seen that article, I will try to find it, and when you're watching this episode, I'll try to link to it because I just thought it was and I will do community service. I will do that, and I will throw that on here. What was your favorite fight?
It was either well, it had to be one of the Brazilians. It was either the Diego Lima fight that I lost. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it on. It's on Fight Pass, Titan FC. I don't remember what number it was, but if you go on there and watch it, it was I think second to last fight, and that was. I feel like that one I pushed the most. Like I dug the deepest in that fight because before the fight, I actually tore my hamstring in the back warming up. I was working on some left high kicks, and my buddy Brian was with me. He was cornering me, so I was doing my move, and I remember we warmed up, and I had already done a good warm up. I had got a good sweat, and so I was working those left high kicks, and I threw one. I was like, hold it higher. He's tall. He's like 6'2", 6'3". So like, hey, hold it higher. He's tall. Okay, very next one, I threw it, and it popped just loud, and I went down. I was holding it. I'm like, oh shit. So I look up, and the other guys that were in the corner, I think it was Pat Healy. I think he fought Jay-Z Cavalcante. And like he looks over, he's like, the fuck was that? And like my coach is standing, he's like, you all right? And my dad was in my corner, he's like, you okay? What was that? I was like, oh yeah, I'm all right. So then I stand up, I start walking, I'm like, God damn, my hamstring's hurting. And so then we're warming up. Still, I'm trying to move around. I'm like, God, guys, I can't really move too well, my hammy. So then I tried to do some wrestling. It's like, well, what about can you wrestle? So I went and I got in on a shot, and my leg gave out. I was like, fuck. So I remember looking at my coach and looking at Crouch, and like, dude, I'm not gonna be able to wrestle. I can't get into my legs. I can't squat down. And he's like, well, we're gonna knock his ass out. And I was like, well, we're gonna knock his fucking ass out. And yeah, so I think that fight, I had planned on winning, like stealing some rounds with wrestling and this and that, and then going out there, and I wasn't able to move my feet. I wasn't able to throw any kicks. I had planned on throwing a lot more kicks, and ended up losing a split. But it was either that one or this last, not the last fight, but the second to last fight against França. He's a big guy, and I won the first round. I felt like I hurt him a little bit better. Yeah, I was doing better on the feet. Then he started taking me down. And then in that fight, I remember being on my back. And even in the first fight, I was cramping up. So before the first fight, I was cramping up. I worked with this guy, and I don't know, the rehydration stuff he sent me didn't do it for me. Because I was in the back warming up before the fight, and I was doing an arm triangle on my buddy Mike, and we're just kind of flow rolling at this point, not going hard. My fucking back cramped up, my neck was cramping. I'm like, God damn. So in the first fight, when Howard had taken me down, I went to just shrimp a little, and my hamstring cramped up. I was like, oh shit. So then in that second fight against França, I was on the back, and again, my hamstring cramped up when I was trying to shrimp. Like, you just put your heels in the ground, trying to get your hips moving. And that's a lot of you're using your hamstrings and your ass. And my hamstring cramped up. And I'm like, holy shit, I can't fucking shrimp. Like, this guy's going to be, and he's on top of me, and he's huge, man. Oh. He's big as fuck. He's up there pounding on me, and I can't get out. And he's good, I don't know. And I do give up a lot of takedowns in fights, so I'm not saying that that's the only reason he was on top of me and busting my ass. But I was worried. Like he dominated that whole round. He kept taking me down. I get up a few times, and then in the third, so going into the third, I was having these cramping issues. I'm like, fuck, I can't be on my back. Like, I'm just gonna fight through it. And then start of the third, I get hit in the nuts, get hit in the head with that knee, and so I'm bleeding all over. And then, I think a big thing was not the guillotines that tired him out, but I hit him with 2 knees to the body while he was on his knees. When I defended the shots, and then I hit him with the knee to the body, and then I went guillotine, he rolled through, and then I hit him with another knee when he was on his knees. And I think those two are kind of what took his gas tank away. But, I'm not sure. Yeah, because he's always in really good shape. So I think those knees is what did it. And he was kind of cruising after the second. It was like, well, if he does that again, he definitely has this win. So
I
after
can't believe
the third,
that guy can make 170. Like, the guy looks like he's 200 pounds.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure he's way over 200, honestly. But
he looked like 200 pounds when you fought him.
Yeah. It was funny. Like after the fight, yeah, it was either that one, either Lima or Franza. Both maybe it's just because they're tall and it looks cool for a short guy to fight a tall guy.
I think
But
it's oof. I think I would say Franza for me personally. That was a good ass fight.
so yeah. But the Lima fight was good and it was 5 rounds too.
Yeah.
So after that fight, I couldn't really walk because my hamstring was all fucked up. I think the doctor said I had 57 stitches. So I had got cut, my eyebrow split like in like a horseshoe, like a I don't know what the hell to call it, like a tuning fork shape. It split,
Yeah.
and I had that, but then I had another one on the side, and I had a cut on my ear. I remember after one of the rounds, I sat down and the cut guy grabbed my ear and was holding it together, and I was like, "Ah, oh, fuck!" And Crouches he stand in front of me, and he goes, "Don't fucking move, your ear's hanging off." And I'm like, "Oh." Shit, okay, but I guess it was split so bad that you could see through it on one of the spots.
Just like
So yeah, I was all busted up on that one. The right side of my eyebrow was really busted up in the Lima fight, and like I said, I get cut easy. So going into the tournament, I've been like, okay, first fight I got to rest a little more. Don't want to get cut. But yeah, so either one of those two. And I remember after that like we was in the back sitting there, and my dad was like, was he big? Did he seem big? And I was like, I mean, I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, just like any other guy. And then they pulled up the video, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, this guy's fucking huge, man. So I'm like, how'd you let me go out there? Look at that guy. God damn.
I mean, like, because by the time you rehydrate, so when you cut, I don't know exactly how it works in PFL, but like you cut the weight, you make the weight, obviously, and then you rehydrate. So by the time like when you walk in the cage, I imagine you're probably close to 180 pounds.
I normally fight at like 92, 93.
Jesus Christ. You
When
can
I was fighting at 55, I would get up to 86, 87. But it was just like, I felt like it was just too much. I was just kind of slow and bloated. And like I said, I didn't have any explosiveness.
Yeah, that's just wild. That's just wild. So that you're able to like put on like that much weight in that short amount of time.
Like, no problem.
Well, I mean,
after you lose 15 pounds in a week, it's easy to put it back on.
Yeah, for sure. And I wanted to ask you about that guy. So you get need you in the balls, and
It was early, like 10 seconds in.
Yep, and then you bend over, and then he gets you.
In the forehead.
How many stitches was that?
So that one, I'm not sure. I think it wasn't too many. I think it was only 6, but it sucked because it was in my hair. And then the lady that was doing the stitches was like, "Oh, I only have dark colored sutures." So she kept cutting my hair. She kept grabbing my hair and pulling it out instead of grabbing the stitch.
Oh.
So it took a really long time. I was like, "Just shave it." I was like, "Just go ahead. You can just shave a little spot. It's fine." And yeah, it took a long time. That sucked. But it wasn't as bad as the doctor that fucking stitched me up in Florida. That was horrible. That guy was an ass doctor. He was like a colon and rectal doctor. And that guy did the shittiest fucking job on all my,
of course he did a shitty job. He's an ass doctor.
Yeah. And I didn't know until afterwards. My girlfriend was like, your doctor's an ass doctor. I was like, I know, he's shitty, right? But it was my prescription slip for my he gave me, what was it, Vicodin or whatever.
Yeah.
And so she was like, no, he's a rectal doctor. I was like, what? So I'm looking like, Jesus Christ. Like in the UFC, they got like the guy who stitches you is like a plastic surgeon. Like he's like in there like doing it perfect. Like it's nice and tight. So yeah, I was not happy with that. That sucked.
For sure. Appreciate your time, David. Before I let you go, did you want were there any shout outs that you wanted to do or anything like that?
Well, if you're watching this, you've already seen my Instagram handle, so just follow me there or on Twitter or whatever.
Cool. So make sure you follow my guy David on his Instagram. Be sure to check out the breakdown video I did of David. I did that leading up to this fight. It's pretty cool. So a lot of work that goes into that stuff. So check it out. Be sure to like it, and everyone have a great 4th of July.